Hey guys, what's up? I am back with another video, and today I wanted to talk about Lies of P. Uh, Basically, I wanted to talk about my thoughts on it, whether or not I think it's good or stuff like that, and just kind of give, like I said, my thoughts. So overall, everyone is saying that, pretty much any review you watch, they're all going to say the same thing. It's a Souls-like. It borrows a lot of mechanics from Bloodborne, Sekiro, Dark Souls 3 even. And, there's a generally pretty positive consensus over the game. I do see some reviews that are pretty harsh towards it. But overall, a lot of people are saying it's pretty good. And honestly, I have to agree. I beat it for the first time last night. The Lost Puppet, Nameless Puppet, sorry. Nameless Puppet and all. I beat him. And honestly, my thoughts on the game were initially pretty negative. And I think that the reason why is because at first it really feels like they introduce a lot of mechanics. I feel like there is a lot of fluff around the game. For example, like the cube that you get whenever you get to the cathedral, even the special grindstones that you can get, along with the Legion arm, the way you can mix and match weapons and handles and stuff like that. There's a lot of mechanics to the game, right? And I think that the game does a pretty poor job at really integrating all of those in a cohesive manner. I feel like that's one of the main gripes that I have with the game. Another one of the main gripes that I have with it, along with most other people, are the boss designs. A lot of people are really, really unhappy with how they overuse the 2 health bars, the 2 phases, and I honestly agree. For example, like the green monster, that's just a tiresome fight in my opinion. The Puppet King, another pretty much of a slog of a boss fight. I find that there's a lot of fat in that game, whether it be the boss design or even the level design. It doesn't feel very concise, and it does seem like an amalgam of different ideas, if that makes sense. It doesn't feel very cohesive. But at the same time, as I got towards the end of the game and the systems started to click in my head, the combat started to click in my head, the story started to click in my head, I really feel like it really came into its own, and it really established its own identity towards the end of the game. The boss designs run contrary to that opinion, but I do feel that overall Lies of P is a excellent Souls-like. I think it's the best Souls-like that has come out that has not been released by FromSoft. I think a lot of people hold that opinion as well, and for good reason. But I did want to talk about some stuff I didn't like. Another thing I didn't like I said earlier, was the level design. And reason being, the linearity, it's very linear. Anyone who's played the game knows that the game itself is incredibly linear. And I don't necessarily have a problem with that. It's like, we're not going to get, I think it's going to be a long time before we get, the interconnected world of Dark Souls 1. I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon from any developer, whether it be FromSoft or Neonis, or pretty much any developer that's trying to recreate this type of game. Just because of the level of complexity and the level of planning that it takes is just really hard to imagine. And it takes a lot of effort, and it does take a lot of resources away. We saw that in Dark Souls 1, where the latter half of the game was severely lacking in quality compared to the former half. And that's just because they put a lot more effort in designing the world in the first half than they did in the second half. So, with Lies of P, they basically forgo that. They forgo the interconnectedness. And in exchange, you do get a very consistent level design. You get a very consistent world design. However, the use of shortcuts, in my opinion, is just, again, a lot of fat. There are so many gates, so many ladders, and just like a lot of stuff that whenever you activate it, you realize that I don't see myself utilizing this shortcut at all. And to that end, it makes me feel like pushing the buttons and to activate these shortcuts is almost a waste of time, because you're very regularly not going to be using them. And in the end, this is their first time doing anything like this. This is the developer's first time doing any game of this caliber, and considering this is their first time, I'm going to give them a lot of slack, because overall I think they did a phenomenal job. Talking about some of the things I did like, everyone really likes the weapon mechanic system, how you can switch out handles and blades. I really like that too. I think it allows for a lot of expression, a lot of creativity. However, one side effect of that I don't see a lot of people talking about is it kind of diminishes the player choice in choosing your stats, right? And what I mean by that is, you can take any weapon handle, put it on any you can take any weapon blade, put it on any weapon handle, right? And that modular system by itself is incredibly unique and incredibly fascinating. However, for example, and during my first playthrough, I got the booster glaive from Vanini's workshop, and I literally used that weapon handle up until the end of the game. I obviously used technique. I obviously used technique as my main stat. But I also got the live puppet axe, and I decided to put the live puppet axe on the booster glaive, right? And so because of that, the booster glaive swung a lot slower, because obviously the live puppet axe blade is just absolutely massive, right? And so basically what it did was it took my dexterity weapon and it almost turned it into a strength weapon because of the size and the weight and how heavy it was, And so because of that, it really makes me feel like the lines between strength and or motivity and technique in the game have been kind of blurred. And that makes me more hesitant to, do a motivity build or a motivity playthrough, because at the end of the day, I could always just take a weapon that scales with motivity and put the salamander dagger head on it, and then all of a sudden I'm taking a strength weapon and turning it into a dex weapon, right? And so I don't really know if there's a solution for that, but at the same time, it does make me think that the meaningfulness behind leveling your character has been somewhat diminished through that system. That's not to say advance, the whole concept of advance is interesting and unique. It is essentially just like Arcane, or a combination of faith and intelligence from any other FromSoft game. But the elements that they utilize, like shock, overheat, acid, whatever it's called, decay, I do think that those are pretty unique, and I think they are a welcome addition to the game. I think that they give you a reason to spec into advance over the other two physical attributes. But at the same time, I do think that there has been a lot of diminished specialization between those other two stats. And in addition, at the beginning of the game, I was very hesitant of the armor system, because, in Lies of P, all of the armors that you can equip to your character are not cosmetic. They are entirely functional, whereas you have the outfits as a separate way to customize your character that don't have any influence on your weight. And I personally think that is a good thing. However, I found myself getting very bogged down by all of the stats that you had to manage with the armor system. And it's also in addition with the surprising effectiveness of leveling your endurance, or leveling your capacity to carry stuff. I forgot the name of the stat, but I didn't really have a lot of fun with that. I'm not sure why. I wasn't a fan of it. Uh, at the end of the day, your movement is not stifled very much if you go above the 60% carrying capacity and get into like slightly heavy or heavy territory. And in addition, the way you're able to guard with your weapons progresses along with your weight capacity. So if you have a heavier weapon, you can block more damage, but that also means you're not going to be as mobile, which is fine. You know, I think that's a good compromise. But overall, I was surprised over how vital it was to level up that stat. Because in many other From Software games, you can get by with not leveling that at all, you know, because at the end of the day, there's many builds that are just naked, and you just dodge around your opponent and just wail on them. And you can't really do that in Lies of P. You can't just like endlessly dodge around your opponent because of the restrictions on, you know, your what's it called? Stamina. Sorry. Your restrictions on your stamina. I found that even when I was specifically focusing on leveling stamina, I had it's not encouraged to dodge around very often. You have to block. You have to perfect parry. These are mechanics that are vital to your success. And I found that later in the game almost forces you to get good at perfect parrying, because if you don't, you will not win. Like Lexacia, the Nameless Puppet, even Simon Mantis to some degree. Perfect parries become more and more vital to your success towards victory. And I think that's fine, because, you know, by the end of the game, you should be well on your way to mastering that mechanic, right? If you don't master that mechanic, then you're not going to succeed. But at the same time, what that means is your stamina is pretty much always at a zero. At least I found that it was very hard to find a balance between attacking the enemy and your defensive options. And that comes back to a lot of the complaints that people are having with the boss design, because it's almost overwhelming, the combos that they throw at you. And I found that there was not enough ergo for the player to really progress to a point where they could have good damage, and they could also have the ability to like keep up with their opponent, you know? So at the end of the day, I think that they have a really good understanding of the mechanics behind these games. I just think that they focused too much on trying to emulate the fast-paced mechanics of like Elden Ring or Sekiro, without actually understanding the deeper mechanics behind it. Because, you know, the long combos of like Romeo, Lexacia, the Nameless Puppet, like I just said, like they don't really match with the mechanics given to you. They don't really match with the defensive options given to you. And I think that going forward, the developer is going to have to find some middle ground, whether it be give more access to levels to the player, so they can keep up with the boss, or just give the bosses, you know, an endurance mechanic where they aren't able to keep up those long winding combos without getting staggered or without doing something. Because like with Lexacia, I found very often that she would just do ridiculously long combos, and then I would get her staggerable, and then she would just jump up in the air and then throw a bunch of fucking lightning at me. And it's like, how am I supposed to, like, how does that make any sense from a logical point? Like, if the enemy is starting to get wound down, it shouldn't make sense that they're able to do these long and incredibly what am I trying to say? Like these really long and incredibly like illustrious even combos. Like it just doesn't make sense. It's not in the player's favor, and it borderlines unfair. So I really think that they have some work cut out for them, especially with the teaser at the end of Dorothy. and the Wizard of Oz and whatever that's going to be. I don't think it's going to be DLC. I hope it's not DLC, because I don't want them to just completely wait. I think that would be a waste, really, of the concept behind the Wizard of Oz to just turn it into DLC. I think a second game is probably in order instead. But I think they have the work cut out for them. I think that at the end of the day, they really need to focus on trying to find that balance between like Dark Souls 1 and Sekiro. Because Sekiro doesn't have an endurance bar. And it really works well in that game because they don't have an endurance bar. That justifies those really long combos, and that justifies the perfect pair, the deflect system, right? Because you're not trying to worry about managing that resource. You're trying to worry about managing your posture. And honestly, I don't want to see them utilize the posture mechanic. I want to see them stay with the regular endurance mechanic. I prefer that. I think most people prefer that. I just think that they need to find a balance. They need to go back to the drawing board, and they need to come up with bosses that are a bit more reasonable and don't demand as much from the player, or they give the player access to that high endurance, and they give them the potential to keep up with the bosses, because I found that towards the end of the game, you don't keep up. You can't keep up, and the only way you can really get good at them is by getting good at them, and that's fine. But think about Dark Souls 3. Like the Nameless King. The Nameless King is the hardest boss in the vanilla game, right? And it's completely optional. So it's a challenge that the player has to go out of their way to find. Whereas compare it to like the Nameless Puppet, you have to beat him in order to get the true ending. You can forego that, but I didn't want to see all of the people that I like die, because that's the thing. I really enjoyed the character. This is kind of a shift, but I really enjoyed the characters. Everyone shits on Venini. Venini was my favorite character. I thought he was great. He's just so full of himself, but he has a right, in my opinion, he has a right to be, so he's cool for that. The Geppetto being the villain at the end, I didn't predict it. I guess I subconsciously predicted it because I never really trusted him. I feel like they could have done a better job at making Geppetto seem more trustworthy, because literally the first time I talked to him when he got to Hotel Krat, I was like, why are you insisting that you're trustworthy? Like, no one does that. So I think that some of the characters in the game are cool. They're well written. Some of them are pretty boring, like Eugenie. I really didn't like her very much. And like the fact that her entire character just revolves around being saved by Alidoro, who just ends up being her brother. I thought that was kind of dumb, kind of pointless. Alidoro himself, was a cool character. I forgot I think his other name. I forgot the name of the guy who killed him, but that storyline was pretty intriguing. I didn't see it coming up until I gave him the glove, and he was just batshit about it. So I thought that was pretty good too. Overall, I'm really happy with the game. I literally just jumped into my second playthrough last night after I beat the Nameless Puppet, and I'm like already back at the Cathedral. That's okay. A little tangent. Hate the Cathedral. That's my least favorite level. I always hate it whenever these people make me do parkour in a Souls-like. It's not built for it, and it's just annoying because I keep falling off and I can't jump, and it's just like, it's annoying. Like, I hate it. And also, Archbishop Andreas, not a good boss fight in my opinion. I think he's boring. At first, he's really grotesque and really interesting, but he doesn't need a second phase. They could have just popped out the guy at the first phase, and I think that would have been fine, or just given him one health bar. Victor, really cool fight. It was nice to see kind of like a Solomon Grundy, Bane type guy. That was pretty dope. Puppet King, I see a lot of people complain about him, but I really like that fight. I think that once you get his parry times down, and you kind of, I feel like that boss was when I started to really get into the groove of perfect parrying, dodging around, like really utilizing my defensive options. I found a lot of enjoyment in that fight, especially in the second phase, because you really do. It really does feel like a dance when you start to get those perfect parries down, and it really does feel like Sekiro, which is really cool. It's cool that they did that, but like I said earlier, the endurance bar really hampers. It hampered my enjoyment drastically in the when I first started playing the game. And I'm seeing a lot of people say the same thing, except, you know, they didn't learn the perfect parries. And if you don't, like, you're kind of like, you're kind of out of luck. Like, you're not gonna have a fun time with the game. And you know, I do think that it's good that they give you the option to summon for every boss. I summoned for quite a few of them, just because I just didn't want to deal with them. Like, both of the Black Rabbit Brotherhoods, everyone's shitting on that fight. I will too. I hate both of them. The characters themselves, not very interesting. The boss fight itself, not very interesting. So I really don't like the gang fights. I wish they would just keep them at a minimum, or do something interesting like Ornstein and Smough, where you have to balance two really different enemies. It's just not fun for the player. It wasn't fun for me, and so I summoned for it. And of course, I literally beat the first Black Rabbit Brotherhood the first time that I summoned for it, and I beat the Black Rabbit Brotherhood rematch the second time that I summoned for it. So I hear a lot of people saying that, you know, you're evening the odds whenever you summon, and you really are for some of those fights, and that should not be the case. So basically, going back to my main point, I had a lot of fun with the game. And there really is some potential from this developer to do something really amazing. I'm very excited for the Wizard of Oz. If it's a game, I hope it's a game. I pray it's a game, because that would be a lot of fun. But at the end of the day, I'm really happy with the game. There are some problems, but this is their first time doing anything like this. And all things considered, I think they at least got a triple. You know, if it was baseball, they got a triple. Not a home run, but they're getting close. And you know, I'm really excited to see what they have planned for the future. So anyways, that was just a little tangent about it. That was my thoughts on it. Overall, you know, if I had to give it a number review, 8 out of 10. It was pretty solid, and I'm gonna go and play it some more and try and blast through this New Game Plus. So anyways, yeah, those are my thoughts on the game. I'll see you guys later.